Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Talking Rubbish podcast. Today, we're joined by the inspiring Anne, aka WellnessinWeb3, who's a psychotherapist and space host for Crypto Mauries and Health Mind. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. How are you, Anne?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Very grateful for the opportunity to connect with both of you again. Always enjoy speaking with you.
But thanks for being here, Anne. I love that you made time. I remember first meeting you in I think it was the World of Women Discord, right? And a lot has happened, I'm sure, since then.
Right. It's been 20 years in Web3 time, but in real time, I think it was maybe June or July, and it's now October, so a matter of months, but it feels like a long time ago. And you were my first Web3 friend, and so thank you for yeah, you kind of segued me into the world of crypto Twitter, and I'm very grateful to you.
And you're still here, and it seems
And
like
I'm
you're still
still
positive.
here.
So I did
Right.
okay.
Yes, you did. I think it is funny. Like I came right at the bear time, which is maybe both fortunate and unfortunate.
It
um
was you.
yeah, I know, that's honest to goodness. There's part of me that wonders, was it me? If I leave, will it pump again? Like, is it me? It's like watching a Dodger game. Got to sit in my chair, got to be in my right spot. Like, I can leave, guys, if it's gonna help everyone's bags, I'll just go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say, like you said, you came in at the bear market. But I think at the same time, it is a perfect time to start building them connections and just building whatever people are building. But I did have a question. What initially brought you into the Web3 space?
Oh, it's a good question. So actually, I mean, my husband was, well, rewinding. I've been, I guess, investing in crypto for a couple years. And then had my eye on NFTs, didn't fully understand them. And who does? No. My husband introduced me to World of Women NFTs, and those were the first ones I think that really just knocked my socks off in terms of their art. And I'm a WowG holder now. That was a goal. I met it. Someday, maybe a wow. And so, yeah, the art there really drew me in. And then from there, starting in Discords, looking at different mental health channels, just recognizing that I share values with a lot of the projects that are also kind of um, have a particular focus on mental health and well-being. Um, so yeah, it was, I don't know, downhill or uphill from there. Met the non-fungible therapist, and yeah, from there met many other people, especially like RX at Crypto Mauries was another kind of first person that I was able to connect with, and I really adore him. I think he does so much for the space, so much for mental health care in the space specifically. So that's, yeah, it's, I guess, upon arriving, it was like, oh, a lot of people care about mental health. Where are all the mental health professionals, right? And so while there are, I'm certainly not the only person. There's quite a number of us, but I think it's, the more the merrier, and yeah, it's a fun space to be, have a professional kind of outlook, but can also geek out over art and um, other, just like as a human, engaging and participating as well.
I can completely agree. I remember just having those like debates late at night in grad school, and just being like, just when you feel passionate about something and you've had maybe like two extra beers and you just start getting louder for no reason, even though you're kind of repeating yourself. I remember getting to that point, and my argument was, why do we need to have, and I'm doing air quotes, a professional online persona, especially when we're in the field where we like want to be transparent and personable and approachable. I understand for the argument of like safety and boundaries, but that was my big debate all the time. And I remember that, like, now I'm watching therapists that are well established and have been in the field for a while, and they're doing TikTok dances, and I can't help but think that a few years ago they would have never agreed to having done that. So I think things change, and this space itself kind of like forces us to be more present, more transparent, more authentic, and I love it. But I don't know what your thoughts are on it. That I thought I'd ask.
No, I mean, it's a very good question, a very good point. It was definitely a point. When I first joined, I wasn't doxxed. I didn't have my own picture up as my profile. And the reason is because, like, as therapists, we are trained to not put ourselves at the forefront. And specifically, right, like, I had feelings about, like, well, what if one of my clients Googled me and here I am, right? And we were just speaking prior to this about stigma and what would they think of me, um, as well as if I share personal things here, is that going to be easily found by other, people who I don't necessarily want to find, that sort of stuff. So I do have boundaries for myself. Like, I won't post a picture of my kid's face um, up. I will post a picture of my husband. He's a grown up, and I ask him. But yeah, and I don't. There's a line, and I think maybe we all have this, therapist or not, in terms of what are the boundaries that we want to put up with our mental health or on our social media. But definitely as a therapist, it's not a straight answer or a clear cut answer. I really have never thought about that whole TikTok thing, but yeah, like, the whole field is evolving. And simultaneously, we have to prioritize client safety and assume that clients will Google us. And if they do, what will they find? And the other thing is just, like, as a therapist, like, I won't have anybody that I have a relationship with on crypto Twitter as a client, because that would be a dual relationship, and that is not ethical. So those are other boundaries that kind of come to mind. But yeah, it's obviously worth a discussion, right? As it gets bigger.
I can't help but think that if I ever get licensed and I start seeing clients that they'll Google me and they'll have to see that hideous Homer Simpson.
You will love that. Sorry.
But is this part of the reason why you're not doxxed?
Right. Yeah. I just want to scare off potential clients with like my great sense of artistic style. I actually, me and Vince have talked a lot about it. We're open to it. We just kind of, at this point, we've done it for so long that we just kind of need a reason, and we have reasons coming up. But until those reasons, we're kind of just comfortable. But I definitely think that doxing is probably, I've slowly been moved to the pro doxing side, especially if we're gonna be spending so much time in this little corner of Web3, the mental health side and the well-being side.
Yeah, it's true. I'm nosy and very curious about what's coming up, but I understand you're not going to say it, but I am curious, so I look forward to the day when you do.
You're lucky he's had his haircut as well for the day when he does finally dox, because it was a bit of a mess before, but I can't talk.
I was so close to having a man bun. Like, I was this close.
Those are just things I wouldn't brag about.
But yeah, I thought it was a really good question you raised, actually. Like, fun about like having, obviously you've got like a professional persona, and you've got kind of like you're just having fun persona. But obviously Web3 you can kind of integrate it together. But I did like what you were saying about keeping them boundaries. But in the same times, I think it like from a non-professional like angle, I think just seeing like people involved in Web3 who are mental health professionals, it makes them a lot more relatable and approachable. But obviously within reason, like you say about setting boundaries. But just to like follow up on that for my question, I was just wondering like what are the issues that you faced like as a mental health professional in coming into the space? Because I understand there'll be a lot of ethical and legality issues.
Yeah, I guess it is dependent upon how a mental health professional wants to be in the space. Like I do run Twitter Spaces, and I make sure that there's a message that this is not therapy. Interacting with me, talking with me is not a therapy session, even though you're talking to a therapist. And I'm careful not to. I would never encourage somebody to go super deep into those, and I think. Um, Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Anyways, yeah, there's a number of things, but it just depends on how people want to present. If I were a therapist who is here, I guess as a way to like market to clients, potential clients, and such, like I think they do on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. Yeah, I would not put so much personal stuff. I mean, not that I put a ton of personal stuff, but I would encourage anybody who is with that focus to not, to keep it very professional in that sense. It's one thing to be warm, approachable, and let people know you're a human, and simultaneously, we never know. It's like once you disclose something, once you share something, you can't not share it. And so it's always better to err on the side of safety there.
I hadn't thought about that because I guess there is different sides to it, right? Like I think we can be online and be human and personable, but that does come with its give and take, I guess, right? Because on the other side, there are people who are doing these things for looking for clients, and those clients do need to have a professional type of relationship with people who interact with them online. So that's a great point. But I did. You mentioned boundaries, and I did notice something about you, and I don't know if you still do it, but here in the Web3 space and the NFT space, it's kind of 24/7 crypto. It's 24/7, and I always used to make this joke every time I would meet somebody that was always like, "Well, welcome, congratulations. Don't forget to get sleep, because those first 2 weeks are intense. You kind of just lose yourself. It's like 4 in the morning, and you feel like you've barely read, and you want to keep reading. I think we can all relate to that, and it never kind of lets up. We just kind of get used to it, I think, and we kind of figure our schedules out. And I noticed that you had basically office hours, but for NFTs, and I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, and I actually took it off my profile because of character space, whatever. But yeah, it was. I actually just did that yesterday. I put not on Twitter's evenings or weekends, and I really encourage. Like, I think this should be a thing, right? Because if we it helped me set my boundaries, and honest to goodness, part of the reason around it was because I, it's like a fear of judgment of other people. Like if I'm tweeting at 8 at night or responding to people, then they're gonna see that I'm breaking my boundary that's written on my profile. Not that anybody even cares that much. It's a very maybe egotistical way of thinking, but it really helped me in my first couple months setting a tone for myself. As a parent, I really value my time with my kids, and simultaneously phones are addicting, social media is addicting, and so I needed that kind of support for myself to make sure that I was actually prioritizing the thing that I wanted to prioritize, which is my kids, my family time. And not only that, like if my brain is working past 7, which it normally doesn't, I typically have a harder time falling asleep. And so it is how I prioritize sleep. And if I don't get sleep, I'm not a good person the next day. So, or I'm not, on my A game. So yeah, it is a 24/7 thing. And simultaneously, if we're here saying that we want to prioritize and value mental health, then I think we all need to not be on Twitter all the time. Looking at you guys.
Yeah, Mence.
Right, I'm deleting my Twitter account. I'm gonna get some sleep. But just in terms of like there is a lot of negativity around mental health in the Web3 and NFT space, and I think the media is a lot to blame for that. I see whenever I hear about NFTs or anything in the media, it's always usually negative things or somebody's like run off with money or rugs, and I think it has created like a stigma around talking about NFTs and Web3 in general, like you were talking about earlier. But I know there's a lot of like negativity around mental health, but what are the positive things that you've seen in the space, or things that you were looking forward to that could be beneficial for people's mental health?
Absolutely. One of the things that kind of excites me the most, and I keep meaning to write a blog post or Twitter thread or something about this, is the positive effect of Web3 and NFT communities specifically on male mental health. Because I think, like, you guys are a great example, right? Where I think a lot of male depression comes from loneliness and isolation and having a difficult time reaching out, not being socialized to talk about feelings or vulnerable issues, et cetera, et cetera. And when you are meeting with people in this space, and especially like if you're on docs, there's so many people who say, like, this is the place I can really be me. And if you can really bring yourself to, a relationship, a friendship here, and be met and find kind of like a like-minded soul, kindred spirit sort of a thing, those are some really powerful bromances that have a really positive effect, I think, on men and their mental health. And there's just so much opportunity there in terms of community, especially for people who maybe are in more isolated places, or who just, yeah, can't find their, I don't know, twin flame. That's not the right word, but like, like friend, twin flame,
They're bromance.
where they live. Yeah, a bromance. Yeah, it's exciting. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, coming from like I was in that position when I first joined the Web3 space. I was like felt very alone and found it really hard talking about my feelings. But like you said, just meeting people who are struggling with like the same kind of things, and then just creating a platform where you can have that openness. And then I think the good thing that I've noticed as well, and it's translated into my own life, is when you hear other people sharing and being transparent and in a judgment-free zone, it does encourage you to share as well. And I think I'd said it yesterday in a space. I think I see it as like passive leveling up. Like in a computer game, it's like passive leveling up because all you're doing is talking and sharing about how you're feeling. But a lot of that does translate into real life, and I found it a lot easier to talk about my feelings in real life from being in spaces and hearing people saying stuff like that. So I really look forward to the blog post. But yeah, thank you for bringing it up. I really appreciate that.
That's right. This is a good time to subtly show that Anne has graced us with a few blog posts already. I think it's been like 3 or 4 already, and hopefully more to come. So if anybody's interested in those blog posts, please check out the MHC publication online. We love all of our contributors, and Anne has been one of the more consistent ones. Mance, you mentioned something, and Anne, you did as well, that I thought I wanted to ask Anne, which was that when you first came into the Web3 space, you felt alone, and you found your place, I think, or at least you found something that resembles your place with what you're doing now with me. And I thought I'd ask Anne because you're new to it, new to the space, and unfortunately you missed out on like the bull, right? Like the flipping and maybe the grinding. I'm not sure. Don't worry. A lot of losers in that era too. So maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? But I wanted to ask. You've been in the space, and you, I'm sure, went through this in a quick way because you said you joked about how it's been 20 years in the space already, even though it's been a few months. How was it finding your place here in Web3?
That's a good question. And I think, yeah, one that I hope other people have a similar journey, because I've really been met with a lot of kindness here. And sometimes I feel, like there are scams and there are lots of that, right? And it can feel like being a lamb and among wolves or whatever. But for the most part, I have just been so lucky. I don't know if that's the right word, because maybe other people have this experience, but just coming across very kind people who have similar values to myself. And that, that includes you, includes other people that I made an effort to, and I still kind of do, to meet people via Zoom or via voice chat, just to get to know people as people too, and not just avatars. I'm just used to connecting with people, I think, like on a deeper level or in a real, more personal exchange. And that has also been very helpful. But, I've had so many women say, like, be safe. And, these are things to kind of look out for. And I very much appreciate the honesty that I've, and the friendships that I've made here.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you've been up to nowadays? I know them, but I thought it'd be nice to hear them here.
Yeah, so I have been doing Twitter Spaces with Miss Nguyen, and I adore her. She's wonderful. She runs a really good space. Yeah, she really is. I think she'd make a great therapist, but she says she doesn't want to. But yeah, so we do that with the Crypto Mories, and I just find her very inspiring. And then also doing spaces with Held Mind, which is formerly Misfit Robots. We do a self-care space every Thursday. Yeah, so that's primarily it. I still have my, my private practice, my in real life stuff going on as well.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just to kind of follow up on that. Obviously, like you said, you've got your IRL practice, but obviously it won't be in like the very near future. But like if the option was available to switch completely over to therapizing in, for example, the metaverse, would you prefer that over doing your IRL sessions, or do you still think you would prefer to do the IRL sessions?
It's a good question. So a few thoughts. One is, like, I actually have a telehealth practice, and so it's all over Zoom. But I actually think that therapy in the metaverse as it is now is not ethical. And part of that is because of confidentiality issues. And then part of that is also, like, you can't see the person, which I just, like, when you're doing therapy, you're getting into some pretty heavy things, and you want to, like, a lot of therapy is kind of looking at people's facial expressions, our mirror neurons picking up on one another, all of that sort of thing. And then the other thing is, like, having hung out in Horizon Worlds just a little bit, like, I get super kind of nauseous with that headset on and going around to different rooms and stuff. And not only that, but, like, I find the headgear kind of heavy. So I just couldn't see a therapist being able to, like, well, not only that, but, like, I like having a therapy session in that sort of environment where all the data is being recorded and all of that, like, hell no. But alas, yeah, like, even if they didn't record and all that, yeah, I think having all that headgear that's a lot to ask. That's a heavy lift for one's neck. But,
I agree. I picture that in a few years, it's almost like the evolution of the cell phone, or at least I'm being optimistic about it, right? Like the first cell phone was like this big brick with like a giant antenna, and this metaverse gear now that we have is kind of the equivalent of that. Like maybe in a few years it'll just be like, I don't know, a sticker on our forehead, but I really don't know.
A pair of glasses, right? Like, yeah, it's kind of like what was the VCR player. And there was even something before the VCR player that we used to get, and I can't remember what it's called. And then it came the DVD player, and now you just have it on your TV. Like, I do agree, that part is going to change. But it is still kind of an odd concept to think about, sitting in a room all day in this alternate reality sort of, and not, yeah, just like not being in your own, it just like, if you were to do that for 5 hours a day, I mean, let's listen to this podcast again in 5 years and see if that holds up. But for now, it's kind of crazy for me to think about that would be enjoyable.
Yeah, you made me laugh because I was just thinking if like we did have the metaverse like therapy sessions or something, and people were going in with like, so you like sat down in the room, and then people are coming in with like the most ridiculous like outfits ever, and you're just trying not to laugh. But yeah, just to kind of like follow up on that, I'm a bit on the fence about the metaverse. I can see like the positive potential, but at the same time, I can see the potential negative effects of obviously people, like you say, these headsets are uncomfy, and we don't really know like the long term effects of them. And the like worrying thing for me is that it could cause people to neglect. Like we are facing that now. Like with Web3, people are starting to neglect themselves IRL because of the time that they're spending on Web3. So one of the fears I've got for the metaverse is just people are being going to be hooked for it to that long that they're going to start neglecting their own like selves in real life. Like especially like the terms touching grass. I think a lot of that will be less prevalent. I was just wondering your thoughts on that. Like any negative effects you could see from the metaverse.
Well, I hate the term touching grass. It's one of my least favorite Web3 terms. But I get your point. And yeah, when I think about what do we want to leave behind in Web 2 and not take with us into Web 3, to me, it's the addiction um, surrounding the use of electronics that prevent us from being present in our real lives. Um, and yeah, and it goes back again to like the Twitter hours or whatever, but just like helping, it would be wonderful to have technology that helps us set limits for ourselves instead of being addicting, right? And I say this as a parent too, and I have children who are at the age where they're asking for cell phones, and like digital parenting is a real thing and it's a real concern that I have. Because typically we parent how we're parented, but most parents now didn't grow up having a phone, right? Or like having this, or having their parents be on a phone. This is all a very new concept that we're trying to figure out, and we're learning that it's not super healthy for kids and their mental health or adults and their mental health. And I would love for there to be some sort of, like, I know it goes against the traditional business model, but boundaries so that we do focus on more in real life. I'll be quiet now. What do you have to say, Sponge?
Oh, I was just gonna I was gonna ask something else, but now I have to ask. Why do you hate the term touching grass?
One is, there are communities in the U.S. and probably in throughout the world, right, who touching grass is a privilege, and not everybody has this privilege to just walk outside. Environmentally, uh, poor neighborhoods don't have as much trees, don't have as much grass, etc. And then I also just hate the term. Like I just fucking hate the term, and it's not rational. So I just find it obnoxious, and it's maybe how Gen Zers feel about me with my thumbs up emoji, I guess. Personally attacked. Just kidding.
Vince, would you get offended if I gave you a thumbs up?
No, I wouldn't be offended. I'd be offended if you called me Gen Z, but I'm a millennium.
I get what Anna's saying though about how, like, I picture a couple, a couple at a restaurant that met because of online dating, right? So that's a positive. And they probably would have never met if it wasn't for these things. Technology, it has a lot of amazing things to offer to our society, um, and they met through things that they have in common that they otherwise would have never had. And yet, because of those same advancements, now they're on their date and they're not even looking at each other on their phones. So it's a shame. It's not, that doesn't speak for everyone. I mean, I know that some relationships are great, but yeah, I guess I agree with that as very very much about like how so much can be done, so much is happening with the Web3 space, but at what cost, right? This addiction thing is definitely a thing. Me and Mence are probably good examples of this. But I did want to ask Anne as well, also, since you've been in the space, what are your thoughts, or what have been your experiences from, like, I guess, moving from Discord and the mental health channels to also now being a part of spaces, being a podcast host, being a space host?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting. I think one thing that I've, and I'm not going to name names here, but it's just been interesting to be in different Discord servers, just as kind of lurking and research about, like when somebody has a mental health channel, sort of like, what does that mean to that community? Who's posting? What are they posting? Why does this guy, NFT therapist, always post his daily mental health spaces? Just kidding. And and so there's that. And then I think, doing the Twitter spaces has been really nice because I feel it's, more of a connection because it's synchronous, it's in real time and talking to real people. Not that people on Discord aren't real, they very much are. But for me, it's a good fit. And I still go into Discord every now and again, but also just going back to time. I only have so much time in a day, and I don't want to give it all to, to Web3. I will
I
keep a lot of it here. Mm-hmm.
personally, I don't like Discord. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. How do you feel about it now that you've been in the space for a little while?
I mean, it is what it is. I hope that there is a new, more fitting sort of platform coming up. I assume that there is, right? Like technology is always evolving, but until then, like I know a lot of people don't like it. It's certainly not my favorite. I don't just, I guess, naturally gravitate towards it, but yeah. I don't really know of anybody who likes it, I guess. Right?
Vince loves it.
Do you really? No.
No, I actually don't. I think the way they're going with Twitter, I know there's been a lot of debates and spaces recently. I think the way they're setting up Twitter now, they're essentially turning Discord into Twitter because you've got like the Twitter circles, which is essentially like your general chat, and then you've got there's another thing as well. I can't remember, is it communities or something where it's like an announcement channel. So I think they're slowly incorporating into Twitter, but I think everyone just does prefer spending their time on Twitter. Really, it's a lot easier to navigate, and Discord can any new channel I join on Discord, you end up like muting the notifications after like the first 10 minutes because it's just boom, boom, boom. And I think if we can get it over onto Twitter, I think it'll be a lot better. But I did have a question. Obviously, like being in the space as a professional, you'll have been in touch with like lots of different professionals all over the world, and I just wondered if like you learned anything from like how people are doing like therapizing and stuff all over the world, and if you've like learned anything from your time in the space, just talking to different professionals that you've like implemented into your own like real life work.
Oh, that's a good question. I'd have to think about it more. I don't think I really have necessarily. I feel like my in real life work is pretty solid. Um, I'm trying to think. Like I do think that there is a future where, for example, if I have a client with social anxiety or who isolates because of depression, etc., finding them, like I think that it could be like a social work role to find NFT communities that are mental health resources in a sense of, hey, here's this Twitter community or Discord community that you can go to and at least, bond with people, at least, make it a point to post once a day and just see what sort of, or respond to somebody once a day and just see what that sort of engagement feels like. I feel like that's pretty exciting for the future, to help people connect with one another. But as far as like connecting with other mental health professionals, I don't necessarily, nothing is coming, I guess, top of mind right now.
Something that I've done that I learned very quickly in the space is I steal sayings from everyone now, and I didn't have that before. So I find myself just kind of talking to somebody, and when there's nothing else, and then even worse, I claim it as my own because I can't remember who it was, and who cares, right? Like,
Dude,
it's not like
then you cite an anonymous source.
it's not peer reviewed, but I have something that I've learned that maybe you've probably sensed too, because that you're thinking about referring them to Twitter Spaces or Twitter communities or Discord communities as a place is that me and Mance we try very hard to always say that it's not therapy, it's not a substitute for therapy. But we do think that what we've done is found a nice little comfortable pocket of saying that at least it could be maybe a step before. It's a step in that direction. People find themselves kind of just sharing a little bit more, talking a little bit more, listening a little bit more, being a little bit more in tune with their emotions when they listen to other people. I think that that has positives. We've heard people say that they wanted to talk more, but they can't because we just don't have enough time. And then they say, I signed up for therapy, and we think, hell yeah, that's exciting. So I feel that that's a positive. And I thought I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Like, do you think that that's a good way of looking at it, or I don't know if you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And I love that, like, this is a point of entry for therapy, right? And certainly peer to peer interactions are some of the most strongest one can have. And let me gather my thoughts because my brain is taking a minute here. Um, how do I say this? Yeah, I think like for me, for example, I'm always sort of um, thinking about, like operating within the bounds of my license because I need to protect it because it is my livelihood. Um, and talking about emotions and, relationship patterns, family dynamics, childhood stuff, like it's there's a fine line, right, that we cannot cross before, you know, it becomes more therapy-esque. And so one thing that I try to do is stay skills based and stay education based and coming at it from that kind of angle. And that being said, I think I think people who are participating need kind of an informed consent on what they are participating in, who are the leaders, etc.
And if all else fails, just start citing things from people. But I definitely agree. Yeah, I think that at the core of it, it's really just people sharing and being heard, and that's it. And people shouldn't get ahead of themselves of like exactly what it is. It's definitely not a medical service, but there is great value in just connecting with other people and not feeling alone.
Oops, sorry, I hit the wrong emoji, but yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful for people to feel that they're not alone, to know that they're not alone, and it's also really important that we as professionals, right, like make statements so that they know and it can participate in an informed way that this is not therapy.
Just be careful of any statements because we've got confirmation now that Fund will steal them all. But I was just gonna say, like, I know you said you were into like crypto and blockchain like before you were into NFTs, and I think blockchain's got a lot of like potential applications and uses in healthcare. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on like using the blockchain for like secure transfer of medical records and things like that. Do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing?
Um, I am not at all an expert on it, but I was talking to a psychiatrist about this, and he, brought up the idea that if a if a and it was uh, Scott Muir, I think he goes by on Twitter, just to cite my source. He brought up, if our in the United States we operate under something called HIPAA, which is the Privacy Information Act, and it talks about healthcare information being private, and it is the rules and laws that we must follow as providers. And if we look at healthcare information as, if we put that on an encrypted NFT and it then becomes property, then how do we look at that differently? what would that, how would that be different in terms of like being able to subpoena one's therapy notes or healthcare notes? And yeah, I think, I am intrigued by what the future brings. I do not have any expertise to contribute at all to that movement, but I think it's really exciting.
I'm also like totally uninformed and blissfully uninformed. That's what I call it, because just yesterday, me and Mance had a meeting with someone, and they were talking about all these really fascinating things that somebody wanted to do in the space, specifically in this. And I felt bad that I just had no response except. So I can definitely relate to that a lot. But I guess just to pivot a little bit away, then I think this would be a fun question too, because you've been in space now, I'm guessing like 3-ish, 4-ish months. Um, I ask everybody, and I struggle with this myself. Now that you've been in this space and you're like this expert, air quotes, right, veteran in the space, how would you describe what an NFT is to someone who doesn't understand what an NFT is?
Oh man. Uh, well, what I mentioned this, I tried to explain to my parents the other day. So it's basically, if we look at like a dollar, right, as a fungible token, every dollar is the same. And then a NFT is a token, but it is not the same, right? So different tokens have different values, and they can be used to provide, I guess, access to different utility within a community, and or it could be looked at as a collectible, which I think was more sort of, I think, useful for my parents. They could understand that. But I'm very much still trying to figure out the words around it. How did I do?
Did your parents get it when you explained it?
I think my dad did. I'm not sure that my mom did. Yeah.
I can't blame them. I think that was a good try. It's not. I mean, if it helps, just to give you
It
some
helps.
company here,
Tell me.
I've been in the space a little longer, right? And I'm here all the time, and I live with my girlfriend, and we talk a lot about everything. And she's heard so much about everything that I'm doing, and I'm pretty sure she would not be able to explain what an NFT is. So that's how great of a job I am at doing this.
That's really funny. Yeah, I think I also, I know I'm not alone in this belief, but in a year, I don't even think we'll be using the words NFT, the acronym NFT. It'll be something else, whether it's smart contract or digital asset or something that rebrands this whole experience. And then we'll have to figure out how to, define it through that lens. It's a work in progress.
I hope so, because then I could just take ownership of the initials NFT for myself.
Like, oh yeah, you are NFT therapist, so, or NF therapist.
He still struggles explaining it now. But it's more of a serious question, and I'll move like a bit more light-hearted down after. But it's like for me, a big thing about mental health, like support and stuff, is accessibility. But I know after the pandemic, there was a lot of like issue with people getting access to mental health support, and at the same time, I understand that there'll be a lot of pressures on mental health professionals as well from in that time. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I can't get this mental health support," but at the same time, there's only so many professionals, and they're doing everything they can to help as many people as possible. So I was just wondering, like, what kind of pressures you get yourself, like just from being a mental health professional, really, like the struggles that you may encounter that people who are seeking out therapy may not be aware of.
Well, I think one thing is like if you are seeking out therapy, don't worry about being a burden on therapists because it's our job. Um, it is our job to set boundaries for ourselves. And so have every right to seek out therapy and you should. And it is our job to take care of ourselves. And if we can't do something, then we will say no. and hopefully help you find somebody who's a better fit. That being said, it is, yeah, it's been really busy since 2020. I actually, about a year ago, cut my caseload down very significantly when I moved out of state. And that has helped my burnout tremendously. I made sure everybody that I was seeing was hooked up, you know, before I left. I didn't abandon anybody, but it has been really good for me to be able to kind of breathe because it did get really busy and very, very overwhelming there for a while. Um, and so, yeah, it is a thing, you know, and there's um, it's our society, I think, is kind of faced with how do we take care of mental health professionals because it is not a job that somebody can or should do for 40 hours a week. You know, I would say 25 hours a week is considered full time. And there are some people who might be angry at that or, you know, have an opinion about that, but it's a lot. And if we're going to be present for the people that we're serving, we can't, you know, we can't be a number and we can't look at our clients as numbers. And so I think we need to figure out how can we pay a, a just wage for that shows that we value the work that these people are doing while simultaneously making therapy affordable and accessible to all. And I have no answer for that, um, but it needs to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I love that response, and yeah, hats off to you for everything you've done. I know you've helped a lot of people, and like you're completely right. You can only help so many people, but you've got to look after yourself first, don't you? Because obviously, if you're getting burnout from too many clients and stuff like that, that's going to affect your capacity to work as well. But just hats off to you, and appreciate everything you've been doing for the mental health community.
That's very kind. Thank you, Mint. And thank you, like all the therapists. And yeah, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, and it really is an honor to have the job. It is an honor when somebody says something like, "I've never told anyone this before," right? Um, and it's yeah, it's great, and simultaneously, um, yeah, there's a lot of people doing very good work. So thank you very much.
I think it's just a good reminder that to look out for ourselves. Even if you're, I guess even if you're not a therapist, right? Like just take care for yourself. A lot of people kind of stretch themselves too thin, and then because they can't say no or they feel this like responsibility to do so, and and then the help or the good that they give onto others isn't ideal. Probably it's not probably the best that they could give, just because they're giving not the best type of support that they can. So it's just a good reminder, in my opinion. But yeah, and you're great. You've already done so much, and that's why I was really excited to talk to you, because you definitely came into the Web3 space with a splash, and I think I can't think of it, and I loved it, and I loved seeing it, and I want to keep supporting it any way that I can. Um, I guess it's a good way. It's a good moment to ask. We know that you came in. We know what you've been up to. What are you working on? What's coming for you in the Web3 space, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I think I'm going to speak very generally, if that's okay. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas, as I know you guys do. And I look forward to kind of continuing to figure out how to best support the mental health needs in the space in a safe and ethical way. And maybe, that, yeah, there's a lot of different, avenues, but I look maybe to the potential of training other therapists. That's something I'm looking into, just so that people have a safe place to go, uh, who are Web3 involved, who are Web3 stressed the fuck out, that sort of thing. And they have somebody that they can talk to that will really understand and really get it. Um, so, yeah, that's and yeah, I also have just kind of come into the space with an open heart, to just kind of let my intuition lead me where I'm going. And so far, it has just led me to some very kind people. And so, Yeah. And also, for anybody listening, next week I'm going to be doing with the Miss Nguyen a Twitter Spaces on Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're going to be talking about red flags of emotional abuse. And so, yeah, I hope people will join.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I'll definitely be there to check that out. And I think they do say that whatever you put out, you attract. So obviously, you must be putting a lot of kindness out there for all the kindness you're receiving. But just to lighten it up a bit, obviously we've talked about burnout and like taking breaks from Web3. So I just wondered what you like to do in your free time in terms of like hobbies, anything like that that you like to do to unwind.
Oh, that's a good question. I have 3 kids, and so the idea of unwinding is funny.
I can
Like,
relate to
mom,
that.
right? Do I get to do that? No, I do. Yeah, I like family time. Dodgers are in they're in the playoffs right now. So gonna watch that tonight. Reading. I love hiking. I love spending time in nature, and I love traveling. Although I guess yeah, no current plans. Um, but yeah, I think it's there are seasons in life in which we get to engage more in hobbies, and I'm currently kind of getting there. My kids are getting a little older, so yeah.
Mance has a few as well, so I'm sure you can relate to that, Mance. But
Yeah.
best of, I mean that's true. Like there's that's it's time consuming. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for you too, Mance. I hope the Dodgers win tonight. That sounds nice.
Thank you.
I think it
Me too.
I think that there's it's important to not let go of these hobbies, right? Because it's very easy to kind of replace. I think the fascinating thing about Web3 is that it gives so much, and that's why it's addicting. It gives you a sense of community. It gives you like a creative outlet. Um, it, it it does a lot, and in some cases, when there was a bull market, it gives you money, but it gives you a lot, and people kind of just let go of that often, and unfortunately. So I think looking at yourself in the mirror and kind of just thinking, I used to love to paint, or I used to love watching baseball, like these kind of things. I think it's a good reminder, like what happened. Let me go back to that.
And I could see that, especially like after grad school, right? When you're in that sort of intense schooling, you lose all sort of connection with reading for fun. You always have something hanging over your head in terms of something to do. And I can see, yeah, like just different seasons of life, but it is always so important to go back to like, what did I like to do when I was a kid? What brings me a sense of freedom? And I will share with you a year after I finished grad school, I did the Artist's Way, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that was a really impactful book and program that helped me remember I enjoy writing. And so I even carry that with me now, like when I'm, writing for Mental Health Collective or for whatever. It's like, oh yeah, it's a gift for me to be able to do that, and I'm grateful to you guys for that platform and for the warm welcome and such. So thank you to you both.
It's the gift is definitely ours. Reading some of the amazing writing that you do. Always appreciate your posts and looking forward for any future ones you may potentially do. But no pressure, of course.
Get over this cold right now. It's it's been a rough couple weeks.
But just to like kind of touch on what you'd said, like about like discovering like passions that you used to have when you were younger. I think since I came into the NFT scene, I used to be really passionate drawer, and I love drawing and painting, and getting into the space that kind of reignited that passion for me. Like I bought a drawing pad, and I've been doing it with my children as well. Like we were doing like mock up NFT things, and we're all like doing little traits and stuff. So I think yeah, just what you were saying about like just getting in touch with and staying in touch with like things that you're passionate about and things to unwind is just really good and really beneficial for your mental health. I know I get a lot out of drawing, like I'm assuming you do for reading as well. It's just a place where you can kind of drift off and just forget about everything. So yeah, really appreciate that answer, and appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thank you so much.
I felt so called out when Anne said, when after you finish grad school, you kind of stop reading, because I thought, oh no, there's just a pile of books against the wall on the floor that I'm scared to like wipe my finger over, because I'm sure it's full of dust. I'm just sure of it. But I do read.
To induce guilt. It was just to call out that like you have been trained, right, to like only read for grades, and you can now shift your mind, and that's all.
I know I'm messing around. I do read a lot. I don't feel that guilty about it, but it was just a funny moment. But I think this is a good time to wrap up. Just a few things. One, Anne, I hope you feel better. I know you're getting over a cold, but I love just seeing you come into the space, and you being welcomed by a lot of kind people. And you're a good example where you came at arguably a bad time financially, and you stuck around. So that says a lot about the people that you've met and the reception that you've been given by the space. It's in large part due to yourself, of course, but just other people as well. So I'm just happy to see that. I'm happy that you found the Crypto Mores. I'm happy that you found Held Mind, or formerly Misfit Robots. I'm happy that you have a lot of G. You were part of amazing communities, and I'm sure you're part of others as well. I'm excited about your future, and I'm honored that we're friends, Web3 friends, and that you've contributed to the MHC a few times, the blog, and I'm excited about your future. So this will be online, and we'll hear it again in 5 years, and laugh at how little we knew about the Web3 space. And if anybody else hears this in the future and they wanted to look into what you're doing, how could they find you?
Well, first of all, just thank you. That's very gracious. I also look forward to, I look forward to what you guys are up to, where you guys go, and specifically what you mentioned earlier about maybe doxing yourself. I will be on the lookout, eyes open. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at WellnessinWeb3.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend. Go Dodgers.